there. Today we are going to talk about how we can write an equation of a line if I'm given 2 points. And specifically, we're going to use slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, to do this today. So quick refresher. If I have a graph, if I have a line, and I were to say to you, write the equation of this line, you would say, oh, I know my equation needs to be in the form y equals mx plus b. So if it's y equals mx plus b, I need an m and I need a b. Well, the b is the y-intercept, right? And then the slope is the m. So basically, I need 2 things to write this equation. I need the slope and I need the y-intercept. So if I look at number 1, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. That happens right there at the point 0, 4. And then I can pick 2 points on this line to find the slope. I can just count rise over run. So if I go from the point up here and count rise over run, I have to go straight down 1. So that would be -1. And then I have to go to the right 2. So that's +2. So my slope is -0.5. So my equation would be -0.5 x minus 4. Y equals -0.5 x minus 4. All right, number 2, same thing. I need a slope and I need a y-intercept, no matter what my line looks like. This line is like a flat horizontal line. So you might even remember what the these equations of a line like this are going to look like. But let me try and figure it out. Here's my y-intercept. That's the point 0, 2. So I know 2 is my b value. And my slope, if I just pick another point, I got to count rise over run. To get from one to the other, I go up or down 0. I don't want to go up or down at all, and then I count over 1. 0 over 1 simplifies to just 0. So when I plug into y equals mx plus b, it would be y is equal to 0x plus 2. And then 0 times x is really just 0. And 0 plus 2 is really 2. So my equation is just y equals 2. There is no x. The slope is 0. Number 3, take a minute, see if you can figure out the equation, and then I'll give you the answer in just a second. All right, so number 3, let's look at it. My y-intercept, 0, -2, so that's my b value. And if I pick 2 points on the line, I have to go up 1, but then I have to go to the left 1. So it's positive over -1, which gives me a -1x. And I don't actually have to write that 1 as a coefficient. I could just write y equals -x minus 2. Either one of those is acceptable. All right, so that's, if I have a graph, if I have a line and I want to write the equation, that's what I would do. Now, what if I don't have the graph? What if I just have 2 points that are on the line? So the steps are really similar. The first thing I need to do is find the slope of the line between the 2 points. But now I can't count rise over run because I don't have a graph. So instead, I'm going to use this formula that should hopefully look familiar. So I'm going to find the slope between the 2 points, and then I'm going to use the slope and one other point on the line. So don't forget, I have 2 points. And the points are always like x, y, right? So I might have the point 2, 7, or 5, -3, whatever. I have an x and a y. So what are the things that I have? So far, I have my m that I found in step 1, and then I have an x and a y from my point. I'm going to plug those 3 things in to y equals mx plus b. So I have the y, I have the m, I have the x. What am I missing? I'm missing the b. So I'm missing the b. So my equation is going to look like a number equals a number times a number plus b. Well, now I'm going to take that equation and I'm going to solve it for b. And that's going to give me the y-intercept value. And then I'm going to use the slope that I found from step 1 and the y-intercept that I found from step 2, and I'm going to plug them both back into the equation y equals mx plus b. So ultimately, my equation, the x and the y are going to be variables, and the m and the b are going to be numbers. So it might be something like y equals 5x plus 2, or y equals negative 1/3 x minus 7. All right, let's look at a couple examples. So example number 1, first thing I do, remember, I find the slope. So I gotta think of this as like x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'm plugging into my slope formula. So y2 minus y1, being really careful with my negatives, over x2 minus x1. So my slope, when I go to simplify, minus a negative 5 turns into a positive. So I have negative 2 plus 5, which is positive 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. And when I simplify that, my slope ends up being negative 1. So I'm kind of like halfway there. I have my slope. Now remember, I need to find my y-intercept. So my y-intercept, I'm going to pick either point. It doesn't matter, point 1 or point 2, and I'm going to plug into y equals mx plus b. So I'm just going to pick this point right here. So remember, I have like an x and a y, and then I have my m that I just found. So y equals, so what's my y value from this point? It's negative 5. So it should be negative 5 equals, the m that I just calculated was negative 1. The x is going to come from the point. That's here. That's that 3. So mx means like m times x, so it's negative 1 times 3. And remember, we said we're missing the b. That's what we have to solve for. So now that I have everything plugged in, I'm just going to go ahead and solve for b. So I'm multiplying negative 1 times 3. And then to solve for b, I'm adding 3 to both sides, and I get b equals negative 2. So now I have my slope, and now I have my y-intercept. I can actually write my equation now. My final answer is going to be y equals negative 1x minus 2, right? I'm using the slope, and I'm using the y-intercept that I calculated. Now, kind of like what we said before with the lines, if my slope is a 1 or a negative 1, I don't really need to write the 1. So I could take this one step further and just write y equals negative x minus 2. Okay, I want to point something out that you may or may not have noticed. My b value is the y-intercept. And if you think back, we always said y-intercepts are always the points where the line crosses the y-axis. We always write a y-intercept as 0, comma b, 0, comma a number. If I look at this second point here, I actually had this b value all along because this was 0, comma a number. So guess what? All this work down here, I didn't necessarily have to do. I could have just gotten the negative 2 value from that y-intercept point. Now, I'm not always going to have that y-intercept point, so I can't always do that, but if I have it, I could use it. Let's look at number 2. So first thing we always do, find the slope. You're going to always have to do that no matter what. So finding the slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And now we're just going to simplify the numerator and the denominator, right? And then a negative over negative becomes a positive. So my slope is positive 5 over 6. Now, I could pick either point and plug into y equals mx plus b like I did over here in this big green circle, right? I could go through that whole process, or I could stop and say, do I have the y-intercept? Is it already given to me? Do I have a point, 0, comma, a number? So it has to be, the 0 has to be first. The x value has to be 0. And in this case, I do. This is my y-intercept because it's 0, comma something, right? What is that something? It's 4. So that tells me that B is 4. I don't have to do the work. So now I can just jump right to my equation. Y equals 5 over 6, x plus 4. And if you wanted to double check, you could plug in an x and y value and see what happens. But when you solve for B, you would have gotten 4. All right, 2 more examples that we're going to do all together. And you may have to change problems in your packet to match these ones that I have up here. You may or may not have to change them. So, okay, number 3. Make sure you have 3, positive 3, comma 10, and 5, comma negative 22. Let's jump right in. So let's calculate the slope. Negative 22 minus 10 over 5 minus 3, right? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Grab a calculator if you need to, or if you want to simplify these. So negative 22 minus 10 is negative 32. 5 minus 3 is 2. When I simplify, I get negative 16. So there's my slope. Now, again, like we just said, I want to look and see, do I have my y-intercept? Remember, my y-intercept is always 0, comma b. So in other words, do I have a point where the x is 0? In this case, I don't, right? So I don't have my y-intercept here, so I'm going to have to do like the long way of plugging in. So y equals mx plus b. You can pick either point. It doesn't matter. I'll just pick this one. It's my x and my y, right? So what am I plugging in for y into the equation? What was y in the point? It was 10. So 10 equals m is negative 16. X value from the point was 3 plus b. So now I got to multiply to solve for b. I got to multiply negative 16 times 3. So 10 equals negative 48 plus b. And then solving for b, I get b equals 58. So now I have my b, I have my m. I can plug them both in to y equals mx plus b. So my equation that goes through those two lines would be y equals negative 16x plus 58. Okay. Last example that we're going to do together. So 6 comma 5 and negative 6 comma negative 3. If I need to write the equation, always start with the slope, right? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Negative 3 minus 5, negative 8. Negative 6 minus 6 is negative 12. And now I have a negative over negative, so my slope is going to be a positive, and I also have to reduce 8 over 12. How can I reduce 8 over 12? 4 goes into both of those, right? So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and then 12 divided by 4 is 3. So my slope is going to be 2/3. All right, so now I have my slope. Remember, next step, I'm going to pick a point and plug into y equals mx plus b. And actually, before I even do that, I should look, do I have a y-intercept? Is there an x value that's 0? Unfortunately, both of my x values are not 0. So I got to pick a point and plug in. I'm going to go with this one, just for the heck of it. It doesn't matter. X and y, you could have used the other one. So when I plug in, my y value here is negative 3 equals 2/3 times negative 6, because my x value is negative 6, plus b. Remember, b is always what you're missing, what you're trying to find. Oh no, now I have to multiply a fraction times a whole number. So if you want, you can use your calculator, but off to the side, I'm going to do 2/3 times negative 6. Well, negative 6 is really negative 6 over 1, right? So when I multiply fractions, I can multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, and then just reduce. So negative 12 over 3, that reduces to negative 4. So I have -3 equals -4 plus b. And then solving for b, I have b equals 1, right? So my equation, y is equal to 2/3 x plus 1. I take my I take my b that I just calculated and my m that I calculated earlier, and I plug them in to y equals mx plus b. Okay, so now you're going to try some practice problems on your own. Before you start, if you have a note packet in front of you, make sure that your problems on your paper are exactly like I have up here. So number 1 should be -2, 4, and 1, -2. And then number 2 should be +2, +1, and +4, +4. So make sure you're using the correct problems, the correct points. All right, take a minute, pause the video, try these 2 problems, and then when you unpause, I'll give you answers. Okay, let's look at some answers here. So remember, we actually found the slope first, and then we plugged in to the x and y from one of the points to find our b. You might have noticed in number 1, when you plugged in and then you went through and solved, your b value was actually 0. So when I plug in, it would be like y equals 2x, -2x plus, that doesn't look like a negative, let me fix that. So it would be y equals -2x plus 0. But I don't really want that plus 0 hanging out there. So we are going to simplify that to just y equals -2x. Okay, here's 2 more. Try these 2 more. So pause the video, try these. Okay, let's look at the answers. You may have noticed, before I put the answers up, you may have noticed that in number 3, I gave you a y-intercept. How can I tell it's a y-intercept? Because that x value is 0. So right away, I can say that my b is 4. So you could have taken your slope and point and plugged it in and solved, and you would have still gotten b equals 4. Or you could have just said, let me just find the slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and then right from there, I don't have to do the next step. I just know that my b value is 4. But in number 4, you do have to plug in all the way. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful. Have a great day.